Hey everybody, welcome back to Mining Modern. This week we have a little bit of a blast from the past for me, personally. It's Living End. Uh, the first deck back when I was started playing competitively, 2010, 2011 era, I actually had second place at an old style PTQ where, 100 people showed up. The winner got the plane ticket. No one else got anything except for packs. So, very first PTQ I ever played in, I played Living End, as a matter of fact. So, the deck is sort of fallen in and out of favor in modern, but it's never disappeared. I actually still have it put together from back then, so it's outside of Merfolk, it was the first modern deck I ever owned because I've had it for so long, and it really hasn't changed a ton since then. Though it's just kind of falls in and out of favor. Maybe right now it's a little worse than Dredge in terms of graveyard decks, but it's very good in the right metagame. So let's go ahead and go over the deck. If you don't know what the deck is, it's called Living End for a reason. It's because it wants to cast Living End. Now, Living End is a sorcery that has a suspend cost of 4 and has a spend 3. So you cast it 3 turns in a row, you remove the spend counter, and it actually gets cast. So you suspend it first. The suspend counters come off, then you finally cast it, and it has no mana cost. It goes in your upkeep. Each player exiles all creature cards he or she controls from their graveyard, then sacrifices all the creatures in play, then removes all creatures exiled from the graveyards to play. What it essentially means is it exchanges the graveyard in the battlefield, full of creatures. And it's pretty great, although the way that the particular card is worded to work means it gets around Grafdigger's Cage, which is the sideboard card of choice a lot of decks are using right now to combat graveyard decks. So it's actually kind of nice. Now, how are we going to cast it? If the whole game plan is to draw 3 of and suspend it, that's not very good. What we want to do is cast one of the more broken mechanics of Magic's history, a card with Cascade. That's either Demonic Dread, which is target creature can't block this turn, has Cascade, or the better one is Violent Outburst. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn, but it's an instant speed Cascade spell. So at the end of our opponent's turn, we tap 3, we Cascade, and now it's going to only hit Living End in our deck because everything in the deck costs 3 or more mana except for the card Living End, which actually has converted mana cost of 0. So we're going to cast a Living End when we cast Violent Outburst or Demonic Dread. And we're going to resolve it. And then we're going to swap the graveyard and the creatures in play. So what that tells you is that we want creatures in our graveyard. So how do we do that? That's where the rest of the deck comes in. A bunch of cyclers. We can cycle Architects of Will for 1 mana. We can cycle Street Wraith for life. We can cycle Monstrous Carabid for 1 mana. Cycle Deadshot Minotaur for 1 mana. Jungle Weaver 2 mana. You just get to cycle these cards, and now you're filling up your graveyard and drawing to the 7. Is essentially a 1-card combo, and you have 7 copies of that card. And you use all these cyclers to find it and fuel it. Then, of course, we have some more to it. Fulminator Mage, just play on turn 3, wreck somebody's land. It goes to your graveyard. It comes back to wreck their land again. Beast Within, destroy their land, then gives them a 3/3. You don't want to do that, but now we're getting rid of their 3/3 with our Living End. It also, after sideboarded games, hits their graveyard hate and stuff like that. Very macabre. You can just discard it, exile up to 2 creature cards from graveyards. Not only does this mess with things like the Malira combo deck, just by virtue of existing, you can wreck their Kitchen Finks or whatever. You can use it to get into your graveyard whenever you want it and get rid of creature cards out of there so theirs don't come back. So it really fits perfectly. And then rounding out, we have Shriekmaw. It costs 5 mana, but it only costs 2 mana to evoke Shriekmaw. When it comes into play, destroy a non-artifact, non-black creature. And then it gets sacrificed because we evoked it. Going to the graveyard will come back again later. So it's sort of a spell you can use on turn 2 to kill, whatever you need to kill of theirs, or Kitchen Finks or what have you. And then you know that when this comes back into play, after you resolve your Living End, you're going to get it, and it's going to be a 3/2 fear. So that's the deck. It's really straightforward, and obviously our lands is a 20 lands, just a bunch of black, red, green lands, just to make it all work, and a couple filter lands to, make sure you have the right mana. In my experience, the mana base is pretty simple for the deck. So moving on to the sideboard. Anger of the Gods, great sweeper. I notice a lot of Living End decks don't run it, but I've been very happy. I've gone at times main decking it in paper because it's very good, especially when those Mana Dork decks are good at wrecking them all. And most importantly, it exiles them so that when you do resolve Living End later, you're only getting back your own creatures. Brindlebore, it's great life gain. Just sacrifice it, gain 4 life. Now it's in your graveyard. You come right back with your Living End. That's how you try to outpace the burn decks. Ricochet Trap. Now this is just a crazy card to exist, but it's awesome because it's 4 mana, So remember everything in our deck has to be 3 or more, or we risk cascading into it. So Ricochet Trap is 4 mana. However, if our opponent casts a blue spell this turn, we can pay 1 red instead of its cost. Change the target of a target spell with a single target. So what that means is the worst enemy of this deck is Remand, right? If we cascade and they Remand our Living End, now it's in our hand and we're not resolving it. But for just 1 red mana because they've cast a blue spell, we can change their Remand or Spell Pierce or whatever their kind of spell is to target our Ricochet Trap. Ricochet Trap will resolve. Now the Remand is left with no target. It fizzles, and our Living End resolves. So Ricochet Trap is great. Slaughter games for the combo decks. Ingot Chewers to bring in against the Relic of Virginitas and all the hates. Same thing as Shriekmaw, taking advantage of the Evoke mechanic. You just get to pay 1. Also, it's nice because you get a bunch of free cards against Affinity that you get to bring in and be good against their stuff. Another Shriekmaw for the creature decks, and then Ravenous Trap, 4 mana, but again, a trap cost of 0 if an opponent has put 3 or more cards in their graveyard. So that's what we bring in against Dredge as our hate card of choice. So that's the deck. Pretty straightforward. Plays out very well. It's very, very good at times. If the meta game is a bunch of basically Melira decks or decks like that, small creature decks, this deck is just extremely good at punishing those. It's pretty good against Jund, Abzan, those things as well. So looking forward to showing you this deck off to you guys. It's like I said, it's the first one I ever had, really competitive experience with. So it's going to be fun. Here we go.